Hello my friends, it's the Game Boy Geek here. Today, you're going to be programming your own robot to manage its way across the factory floor to get to the final checkpoint first. But you have to watch out for those pits, conveyor belts, and other robots' lasers, which might give you damage and affect your very own program. Robo Rally is a competitive racing game full of robotic chaos for 2 to 6 players. It takes 45 minutes or more to play depending on which map you select. It's for ages 12 and up, and the original version was published in 1994, but this new version is published by Renegade Game Studios. Now today, we'll be doing a rule school where I'll teach you how to set up and play the first game so that you don't have to read the rulebook yourself. I've placed timestamps below me in the description of this video, just in case you want to jump to a specific section of the rules. Let's get started. Robo Rally is a competitive racing game full of robotic chaos for 2 to 6 players. You're trying to be the first robot to complete all the checkpoints on one of the many pre-constructed courses with all ranging of difficulties. You'll be programming 5 moves each round, then completing those moves on the board one at a time. And these consist of moving and rotating and getting energy to buy upgrade cards or even doing U-turns. But all sorts of things will be happening between each move, like going down conveyor belts or even robots shooting lasers and damaging others. But you'll also be able to install upgrades like brakes or being able to face in any direction. And as you gain damage, they might clog up your hand until you finally decide to play it to get out of your hand, but before it goes out of there, you're going to get a random effect from the top of your deck. Who knows what you'll end up doing. Or it might even be a harsher effect, but that you get to know what it's going to be the round beforehand. So can you create the best strategy with your own basic cards and installing all these cool upgrades in order to get to all the checkpoints first? To set up, there's many different courses you can select, but today I'm going to help you set up and play the starter course, Milk Run. You're going to find the board that says in and out, and you're actually going to place it so the bottom left is right here in the bottom left so you can read it like this. You're also going to find this vertical docking bay board, and you're going to put it on docking bay B side just like this. Next, put 4 energy cubes on the top 4 spaces on the docking bay. You'll place the reboot token right here, and you're going to put the checkpoint 1 here. Now you will have to put the sticker on both this and the flag the first time you're playing it, but that's exactly the space that you put it in. That's the only checkpoint in this game. Next, each player is going to select their own robot, and they will select the mat of that robot, and they'll get the painted miniature of that robot. Next, you'll place an energy token on the value of 3, and then you'll take your checkpoint marker that matches the same color as your mat. In this beginner game, you're just trying to be the first one to get to that 1 checkpoint. In other games, you'll be using this to track which checkpoints you've actually completed. Next, you're going to find your specific deck of programming cards, and the backs of these are going to match the color of your mat. You'll have 20 of them. You will shuffle them up, and you'll place them face down right on the draw pile of your player mat. Next, you're going to find all 40 damage cards. These will either say Haywire at the top or Spam on the fronts of them, and this is what they look like on the back. Notice that the backs are the same back sides as your deck. You're going to take these cards, you're going to shuffle them up, and you just place them off to the side of the board. Next, starting with the youngest player and going clockwise, each player is going to select a starting gear to start their robot at. You cannot select any of the 4 ones that have the energy cube on them. When you've selected one, you'll take your archive marker that looks like this from your specific robot, and you'll have it so it points towards the main board. Then you'll place your robot on that archive token facing in that same direction towards the board. And once everyone's done that, it will look something like this. And you'll give the priority token to that youngest player. The object of the game is to be the first robot to get through all the checkpoints. In this board, we just have 1, so the first one to get there is going to be the winner. The game plays over multiple rounds, and each round goes through 3 phases: the upgrade phase, the programming phase, and the activation phase. We're going to skip the upgrade phase right now because that will make more sense to you once you have a better grasp of the game. So we're going to jump right into the programming phase, which is typically the second phase of a round. Now at this point in time, you're going to take cards from your draw deck until you have 9 cards in your hand. For this first turn, you'll be drawing 9 cards. After this, you'll be drawing only up to you have 9 cards in your hand. In future rounds, you might find yourself drawing up to 9 cards and not having enough to draw. In this case, you'll take all the cards that would be in your discard pile, you'll shuffle them up, you'll place them back in your draw pile, and then you'll continue to draw until you have 9 cards. Next, all players simultaneously are going to select 5 cards, one to put in each of these numbered registers, from their hand, and they will place them face down. These are going to be the cards, and in the order that your robot is going to perform these moves. You're essentially programming your robot, so you need to look at the board and plan. Now, once all players have done this, we go to the third phase, which is the activation phase. Now, starting with the player who has the priority token and going clockwise, each player is going to flip over their first register, and they're going to do what it says. Like in this case, it says move 2. So we'll move 2, we'll go 1, 2, and it climbs right up on that conveyor belt. And also notice, when I moved onto the conveyor, I did not rotate it in any way, shape, or form. Now in clockwise order, each other player is going to activate their first register card. And so after everyone's first card, it might look something like this. Then, after everyone has completed their register card of number 1, you're going to go through the board elements activation. Now, there is a player aid here to show you. You can keep this like this next to the board. And so you're going to activate everything like this in these numbered orders. Now, I'm just going to show you the ones that are going to activate right now. First, the blue conveyor belts are going to activate. Now, the blue conveyor belts, you'll notice most of the spaces have these 2 arrows. That means it's going to activate essentially twice. So it's going to go 1, 2. Notice that it did not change the direction that he's facing. Now let's say this is where he was when it was supposed to be conveyed up to twice. So it would go once, and because there's another robot there, it would not be able to push and move this because the strength of the conveyor belt can't help you push other robots, so that movement would end now. However, if it started here and you were activating the blue conveyor belts, it would go 1 and it would just stop and end its movement because now it's off the conveyor belt. Now once you've activated all of the blue conveyor belts, you're going to activate all the green ones. Now look at this. This one here is going to move like this, but you'll notice it's going to then rotate to the left because of that arrow there. So it's going to go like this, and it's going to rotate to the left, which puts them like this. Now keep in mind, if this robot moved onto this conveyor from here, it would not rotate because it moved itself on there. Only if it's being conveyed, if you will, to there, will it then rotate right after. And notice that the green ones just have 1 arrow, meaning it only happens once. Now keep in mind, these happen simultaneously. So let's say this is how it was and we were about to activate the green conveyors. Essentially, this happens simultaneously. Now I'm just teaching the rules how to get started on this first course. So there's no push panels, gears, or board lasers, so we're gonna skip right over those. Now we're gonna go to weapon activation from robots. So now the robots are going to fire its main laser by default. So each robot is going to fire their laser, and this one's just going to go boom right off the board. This one's also going to go off the board. This one just goes here, misses. This one goes in this direction, but these little yellow things here are walls, and they block both movement and lasers. So this hits this and does not hit them. If this wall was not there, the laser would have hit him. If this person was here and there was no wall, it would hit this person and it would not go through to the next one. Only this one would get damaged. Now we'll talk about taking damage later because there's a little bit more involved information about that. So we'll cover damage later. But now that we've just talked about walls, let's talk about how they interact with moving. If you were to move 2, you would go 1 and you wouldn't move anymore because it would hit that wall. If you are moving and there's another robot there, you will push them. So for example, if you were going to move 1, it would push this robot like this. If you were going to move another movement, it's stuck. It won't go any further because there's that wall there. And in this case, if this player was going to move 2, it would push all these robots 1. And again, it couldn't push any further because there is a wall there. Now let's talk about the end of register activation, batteries. If you ended on one of these for this register, you gain an energy. And again, this is how you gain energy in order to get upgrades. Now at this point, you'd also check if anyone has reached a checkpoint. Now on this beginner course, if someone has ended their register on a checkpoint, which is the only one, which is this one, they have won. Otherwise, if there are more checkpoints, they would check this off like this to show that they have completed the first checkpoint, and you've got to go in order to win. Now once we've gone through that for the first register, we're going to do the same thing for the second register. Flip it up, and you're going to do this. Now keep in mind, priority does not change. This player will still have this all the way till we get through all of the registers. And remember, once each player has activated their register, you go through all of these board elements again. And so you'll continue through this activation phase until all players have gone through all 5 registers and you've activated the board elements between each of those. Now notice that these are pretty self-explanatory cards. U-turn is just doing 180 degrees. Moving backwards is essentially that, going backwards 1 space without changing your orientation. This is activating the card right before it. Some upgrades and damages will place another card or cards on a register. If this is after one of those, it always does the last card that was placed there. And of course, sometimes you can just rotate, or sometimes you can actually, instead of playing one of these, you may have played something like this with a power-up, which would give you another energy, if you will. Now, once you've gone through the 5th register and you've finished all of the board and robots and end of register activations, you're then going to go through the end of round. Now, first of all, the player holding this priority token is going to pass it to the player to their left. Then discard all your face-up register cards to your own discard pile. We're going to go over the damage details later, but if you had any damage cards in your registers, you're going to place them in the damage card discard pile. You may have face down cards in your registers right now due to some damage and other things. If so, you're going to leave it like this, face down in that register. Now that you know the very basics, let's dive a little deeper into some of these concepts. Now I told you the phases go upgrade phase, programming phase, and activation phase. We skipped the upgrade phase at the beginning, but let's talk about it now. This is where you can acquire, install, or uninstall new upgrades, and everyone does this at the same time. Now, once in this phase, you can spend 1 energy to draw 1 upgrade card. Only once per upgrade phase can you do this. Now, those cards in your hand are known as uninstalled upgrades. You can install one, pay the cost, in this case 1 energy. If it's a red card, you put it to the side of your board like this because it's temporary and it's a movement upgrade. You can rotate to face any direction. Keep in mind, you can only install 1 upgrade in any upgrade phase. These are called temporary upgrades because once you use them, you will put them in the discarded pile of the upgrades. Now, instead of installing a temporary upgrade, you can install a permanent one. They go here in your install upgrades. Remember, only 1 total upgrade can be installed per upgrade phase. You can pay the cost. Now, this is a permanent ongoing ability. All your move 1 cards in your registers may be treated as move zeros. They're breaks, essentially. Now, you can never have more than 3 permanent installs and 3 temporary installs. If you were to get another one, you have to discard 1 of the ones that were there. Keep in mind, you can have an unlimited amount of uninstalled upgrades in your hand. So let's talk more about taking damage. Earlier we talked about taking damage from lasers. Now if you take damage, you're going to pull 1 card for each damage that you take, 1 at a time, from the damage deck and look at it. It's going to be one of 2 types. If it's a spam card, it goes on your discard pile. Now remember, when you're drawing cards at the beginning of the round, if there are no cards in your draw deck, you'll shuffle your discard deck and then you'll draw from that. So eventually this is going to end up in your hand. Now it's going to be clogging up your hand as you're not allowed to discard spam from your hand, and you'll need to program spam into one of your registers to get rid of it. So let's say the game has gone on again longer and we come to here and we flip up our register 3 and it was a spam card that eventually ended up back in our hand. Well, what you do is you'll discard this back to the discard pile of the damage, and you pull a random card off of your draw deck, which means you're going to do something that is unpredictable and it's really going to screw your plans up. If it happens to be another spam card, do the same thing again. You've just gotten rid of 2 spams for 1 sort of screw up. However, let's just say instead we just took damage and we got a card from the damage deck, and instead of it being a spam card, it's a haywire card. All damage is either going to be a spam or a haywire. When you get this card, you don't show it to your opponents, but you can see what it is and you know what it is. You're then going to put it face down under the current register like this. This is going to hurt you in the future round. Now remember, at the end of the round, you're going to discard all of your face-up register cards, which means that face-down haywire card is already programmed for next round. Now if you happen to take more than 1 haywire card on the same register, any additional ones are put directly in to the discard pile of damage deck. You lucked out. So now, let's say it's next round. I've done this, we're going to register 3, here comes the haywire. Move 5, if you hit a wall this register, take a damage, for example. Now keep in mind, there can only be 1 haywire into each register, but you might have multiple registers with haywires in there depending on what happened last round. Now let's talk about rebooting. During your own programming, or through some effects of other things like conveyors or other robots' actions, you might be pushed off the board. Now when this happens, you'll put your robot on your mat. Now you're going to discard all of your registered cards. All the face-up ones, if they're your normal cards, they go onto your discard pile. If they are a spam one, they go to your discard pile. If it's a haywire damage, it goes to the damage discard pile. Then you're going to draw 2 damage cards one at a time. If it's a spam, it goes to your discard pile. If it's a haywire, you place it face down in the register where you were, pushed or fell off the board, or into a pit in future maps. None of your upgrades are affected, either installed or uninstalled. Now, at the beginning of the next round, you're going to come back to this reboot token, and you're going to be able to decide which direction you are heading. So you'll program your cards as normal, knowing that you can plan which direction you're starting to be facing in. And then when it's your turn, at the beginning of the next round for the first register, you will place yourself on the reboot token on the board you fell off of. And this is the only main board in the first course here. And then you'll continue as usual. If you fell off the docking bay board, you'll place yourself on your own archive token, but you can choose which way you face. You don't have to point in the way that your archive token is facing. If for some reason there is a robot or other obstruction on the spot you're supposed to respawn at, just push that one direction either the arrow is facing. Now these spam cards, remember, they stay in your hand and they clog up your hand until you play them, and then you get a random effect. So you may want to shut down to get rid of them. Now, after everyone has programmed all their cards, but before anyone does their first register, you can indicate that you're shutting down. Now in this case, you could take all the damage cards that are in your discard pile, in your registers, or in your hand, and discard them to the damage discard pile. Then you're going to place all the normal register cards that are both in your registers and in your hand into your own discard pile. So essentially, you're not going to be doing any actions from your programmed cards, but you stay on the board, which means you're susceptible to other things like lasers or being pushed off the board, if you will. On the plus side, if you shut down strategically, the conveyors are still going to move you towards the checkpoint. Now when you shut down, you cannot collect any energy from batteries, nor can you complete any checkpoints either. Now at the start of the next round, you'll continue as normal. That's pretty much how to play Robo Rally, and the first one to go to all the checkpoints, in this case the first one, is going to be the winner. Well, I hope this helped you dive right into Robo Rally faster than you normally would if you had to read the rulebook yourself. Now, if you have further questions about the rules, I've placed a link below me in the description of this video. That's the best place to ask them, since I'll be notified, but so will Renegade Game Studios.